So I trimmed my hair today and I look a bit Melvin Bragg. Why is that my go-to? I always forget this drink looks like I'm drinking a glass full of piss. Oh well, hello! So this weekend was the lovely Simon Savidge's initiative of Book Hibernation weekend, and I took part. So I found this really interesting because I think the books I picked on my TBR, which you can check out somewhere, the books I picked were probably a little bit more in line with my kind of ancient history reading taste than my more recent history reading taste, if that makes any kind of sense. Probably not. And I kind of did that intentionally because, as I said in, I think, the first video I did coming back, my reading tastes have changed and I've been struggling to deal with a bit of almost sort of resentment to my own bookshelves. I've been kind of looking at all these books that I own, that I've bought over the years, and stressing about the fact that my reading tastes have changed and will I ever get back into any of these books. So I was kind of using this hibernation as a bit of an experiment to see, did I still like some of those books, and if not, like, that's okay. So that's what I was kind of doing with this. I kind of had mixed results. So the first one that I read that was on my list was one of the short and sweet ones, and that was Barbara Kingsolver's Homeland, one of the short Faber Stories books. Can't talk. So as I said in my TBR, I've never read any Barbara Kingsolver before. I think I've kind of been put off by how big her books are, and the fact that some of them seem a little bit more historical or maybe sort of rooted in things that weren't kind of my bag, but I thought this would be a good introduction. Now, I think I liked the style of writing. I think I did. It's one of those where I'm not really sure. It didn't take much out of me. It only took like 20 minutes or so. It's only 35 pages. I sat outside with a cup of coffee and read it, and yeah. I suppose this is kind of what I mean at the moment about not being sure on my reading tastes. Next up was Jenny Offill's Weather. Why am I saying her name weird? Offill. Oh no, that doesn't sound right either, does it? Anyway, Weather by Jenny Offill. When I read Department of Speculation, I was at uni and I was still very much writing, not really something I do anymore. And that book for me was a revelation and a big inspiration for sort of writing short, sharp bits of prose that added up to an overall narrative. So I was really excited and kind of intrigued to see how I would respond to what I assumed would be a similar setup. And it was a similar setup. Now, I think the problem I had with this book was more to do with my expectations of it. I think when I went into it, I was expecting a book more along the lines of Megan Hunter's The End We Start From, and that's not what I got. So that's on me and my expectations when I was going into it. I did enjoy it. I thought it was beautiful. There were some bits that I highlighted that really stood out to me. All I really knew going into it was that this book was slightly concerned with sort of climate change and things like that, which I think is why I had the expectation of a Megan Hunter End We Start From kind of book, which it wasn't. But it felt really timely to, like, right now, to the micro, rather than the kind of the slightly larger aspect of climate change. And there were some passages that kind of really stood out, and I think maybe that's what added to it not being a particularly kind of like escapist and comfortable read at this precise moment in time. So things like, in 1903, a famous psychologist worried that young people would lose their connection to dusk and its contemplative moments. Ha ha ha. Except, when was the last time I stood still because it was dusk? And at the moment I found myself standing outside of an evening or going for my walks and it's dusk and thinking, when was the last time I did this? So that really stood out to me. And another one that stood out at the moment, someone returns a book called The Sayings of the Desert Fathers. I flick through it while I eat my lunch. A time is coming when men will go mad, when they will see someone who is not mad, and they will attack him, saying, "You are mad, you are not like us." So yeah, a bit of a mixed reaction to this one, I think, for me. But I know that that is because I went into it loaded with my own expectations of what the book was supposed to be about, and that was because I hadn't really engaged with what it was about, and also my expectations based on how I reacted to her work before. But some passages really stood out to me, and I do love Jenny Offill's way with words. God, that sounds so like lame, like, I love your way with words. But there is still a lot about this book to love. I just am conflicted at the moment. Next up, I then went a little bit Viking, and I sat and read some of Snorri Sturluson's prose edda in bed. Now, full disclosure, I had actually been previously reading a little bit of this a few weeks ago, and then I'd put it down, and then when I tidied, it just went back on my shelf, and so I got it back out for this. So it wasn't like I started and finished this during this weekend. That, I don't know, that feels like cheating? No. I have also read it years and years ago, so reading it this time, it was things that I hadn't really picked up on last time, things that I hadn't remembered, things that just totally passed me by. Bonkers, brilliant, mythical, amazing, weird, what's not to love. I was then planning on also reading some of The Wanderer's Havamal in bed as well, but I fell asleep. But this is definitely one that over the coming months I'm going to pick up, because having flicked through it before, read little bits of passages, knowing that it's Odin's wisdom, I think there's going to be something in this at the moment, so this one is going to be one that stays on my bedside table. Then most of Saturday was spent reading two books that, again, different reactions to what I was expecting. The first one, I picked my Beary prompt and read The Bear and the Paving Stone. Now again, this is one very much in line with my old reading tastes, and maybe not so much anymore. I would say if you've read any of the other Pushkin Press books in this series, of the sort of Japanese novellas and short stories, then you're going to enjoy it. In each of the short stories there's humour sort of tinged with melancholy, which was really sort of moving. But I think, I don't know, I think I'm going to have to do a whole video about why, I don't know, but about my change in reading taste a little bit more in depth and what sort of happened to that, because yeah, anyway. Then the last one I read, which is one that I was really, really excited about, is On a Sunbeam by Tilly Walden, this huge, chunky graphic novel, which is a queer space opera. Now, I've been really excited about this one, and I don't know, I feel like I'm being really negative about all of these books, but that's not the case. But with On a Sunbeam, I enjoyed it, but again, not as much as I thought I was going to. The artwork is gorgeous, particularly some sort of full page bits that are more to do with the environment and things like that, but I did find that it wasn't maybe as clear who the different characters were as I possibly needed it to be for me. And that could just be because I've read more graphic novels in the last 12 months that I've got used to different art styles. But there wasn't as much obvious differentiation between the characters for me in the artwork. But that's, as I say, that's just a personal thing. For me, I didn't find it super easy to always know who was who. The first sort of quarter of the book, I was trying to remember every time somebody spoke or every time somebody appeared, I was trying to remember who they were. But as I say, that's not a criticism of the artwork, because the artwork is gorgeous. I guess it's more criticism of my reception and how I was reading it. I don't know. Has anybody else read this one and also had that problem? Is that something that just comes with adjusting to graphic novels and different types of artwork? I think probably yes, answering my own question. Yep, never mind. Because as I went on, I did find it easier to differentiate, but still not quite as quick as with other graphic novels. The storyline was nice. It was simple enough, but with elements that made it more complicated. But the elements that made it more complicated, it kind of felt like they were hinting at more of a backstory, and I didn't quite get all of it. It didn't feel 100% clear all the time. But again, that could well be because I've been reading graphic novels that are a little bit more cut and paste, whereas this is something slightly different. I don't know. I don't really want to say that I was disappointed by it. It doesn't seem very nice to say. But yeah, I guess I was a little disappointed. You know, I don't ever want to be overly negative about stuff, but it wasn't, for me, it wasn't what I hoped it would be. And so far that's kind of been true of all the books that I read over this weekend. Now you will notice there were 3 of my TBR that I haven't read. That's the Anna Burns, Mostly Hero, and both of the Ali Smith books, both The Story of Antigone and Shire. I don't really know if my reluctance to read Ali Smith, which I touched on in the last video, was still in play, or whether it was something else. I don't know, but they just weren't ones I ended up reaching for. I kept on nearly going for The Story of Antigone. In fact, I sort of carried that around most of Saturday, thinking, oh, I'll read that one once I finished The Bear and the Paving Stone. But then I just kind of went with On a Sunbeam, sat down with a cup of tea and a slice of banana bread. So yeah, I don't know, but I did find that odd that 2 of the 3 that I didn't read were the Ali Smith ones. I did also read Heartstopper's Volume 1 because I saw somebody tweet that it was on Kindle for 99p, and it's one that everybody's raved about by Alice Oseman, a graphic novel about 2 young boys who fall in love at school, and I read it and it was super cute, and I do want to read the other 2 now. So yeah, a bit of a mixed bag of a weekend, but like I say, my overwhelming feeling of this weekend is that I'm really glad I did it, and that I pushed myself to sort of try some of these books that have been on my shelf for a while, that were perhaps the taste of old me, and I gave them a go. And I am trying to deal with that struggle of, is it okay that my tastes have changed? Or not is it okay, but being okay with my tastes having changed. And possibly a bit of a shift in me is that when I was reading and, well, I was noticing that I was reacting differently to these books than I would have done previously. I could feel that difference, but I wasn't attacking myself for it. I wasn't beating myself up for it. I wasn't at any point going, oh, I'm not enjoying this, just stop reading, it's so stupid that you're carrying on. Because it wasn't that I wasn't enjoying the books, it was just that they felt different. I don't know. And just from a sheer volume point of view, that's the most I've read in a 2-day period in a while, I think. Particularly different things. You know, I've had a weekend a while back where I was just reading all the Witcher books, but that got kind of a lot for a different reason. So I am really, really glad that I did this, and a huge thank you to Simon for setting this up. I think just outside of my own personal experience with what I read this weekend, this is just a fantastic thing to do and encourage people to do. And if people need to name what they're doing in terms of I'm having a weekend of reading and it's book hibernation, if that helps them to give themselves permission to switch off and just spend time reading at this time, then I think that's fabulous. But I would say you don't need to do that. But if you feel like you do, then do, because it's great. So yeah, I have a lot more feelings to digest with this whole reading weekend than I was expecting. And again, 2 years ago when I was doing BookTube, this probably just would have been a normal weekend and my wrap-up video would have been just a more straightforward kind of reviewing of the books. But things have changed, life has happened, blah blah. I know it may seem like I'm constantly trying to justify my change in reading, and I guess in some ways I am to myself, but I just think it's a really fascinating thing that has happened and does happen to many people. From some of you that are talking to me in the comments, particularly after the loss of a loved one, it has such an impact, but also just in terms of growing up and taste changing, it happens. But I think I would like to do a video touching on it a bit more specifically. I mean, I know I've waffled about it in a couple of my videos lately, but I think until I properly kind of sort it out in my head, it's just going to keep cropping up. I don't know. At some point as well, I probably will put out a doodle poll type thing of videos that I'm thinking of doing that I would like to know if there's any interest in. I will link that in the description below. I don't know whether I'll have it up immediately once I've done this. That would probably be a good idea, so I'll try and do that. But yeah, aside from something on Norse and Vikings, which few people have said they'd be up for that, something on fantasy reading, and a bit about my sort of reading taste, I've got a few other ideas that I'm sort of thinking of, and yeah, I want to be doing videos differently in terms of I don't want to just do hauls and wrap-ups as much as I used to do. A, because I haven't got the money to be buying them as much. I'm not working in a bookshop anymore, so I don't get them for half price. So I'm not going to be buying as much, and I want to just approach things differently. So yeah, keep an eye out for that. If there's not a doodle poll in the description for this video, my Twitter will be, and my Instagram, and so follow those and I will put any doodle poll links up on those, I guess. I apologise for this having turned into more of a reading therapy session than I intended, way more so than intended, but I hope this was interesting in some respects. I don't know. I also really hope that my reception to any of these books doesn't put any of you guys off if you were interested in them off the back of my TBR and ordered them, or were thinking about ordering them. Please don't just think just because I didn't enjoy them, you're not going to enjoy them. There is so much to enjoy in these books. As I said, I think it's just me at the moment. So that was my book hibernation weekend. Did you guys join in? If so, what did you read? How did you find it? Did you enjoy it? Was it helpful? And yeah, what books did you read and what did you love and what did you not love? But yeah, I have yet another banana bread cooling downstairs waiting for me, so I am going to go and address that, i.e. put it in my mouth, and I'll see you next time.